So there we have a short snip from the Queen's speech this evening at 7 o'clock, and it's particularly pertinent to say that, yeah, she does point out things that are stereotypically British, that say we are self-disciplined, we are quiet, good-humoured resolve, and the like, that I know that these thoughts of containing your emotions and not just saying the first thing that comes to mind and oversharing with everybody isn't so trendy these days, and you're supposed to talk about your feelings and let everybody know how you're doing, but that isn't actually helpful in times of crisis. And so that what is seen as bottling up and not sharing is seen as toxic masculinity today, but has long been respected as an attribute of which to be employed in dealing with things that are uncomfortable. And most of human history can be characterized by suffering, and of course that's what men seem to characterize more so, but Britons as well as a national identity, that we do have that. So if Sargon's still looking for what makes us British, well then there you go. But it's very good for somebody of her stature, of course, and now in her 90s she doesn't have time for these young, trendy 30-year-olds. She's got grandchildren that old, crikey. Then it's not going to faze her. But more than that, not only is she mentioning these things which are very important when dealing with crises, that you don't let yourself be overwhelmed, but you keep a cool head and a stiff upper lip in the face of great adversity, that also she pushes out to further national pride and to say that the pride is not in our past, but instead it is in our present and our future, actually pushing forward a message of saying we can be proud of this country. You don't have to apologise for the sins of your ancestors and what Britain is supposed to have done in decades and centuries gone by, but instead we can say, no, this is actually a great Britain. That is the country of which we live in, and we can take pride in that, of our ancestors, our lineage, our bloodline that has created us and whose memory and spirit still lives on within us. And of course she's seen that country change a lot in the past few decades, but still draws upon that national unity and national identity in order to try and say there is still that strength of Britons within the country trying to push through, and we can be proud of that, and dealing with things as a unified country and as a national identity. So thank you to our Queen. And as we move on to the other stories with that out of the way, but I do want that to be the overarching underlying theme of pride, essentially, of being able to do things and being proud with the things that you've done. That is what's important and what we will stop on today. Given that, despite the precautions, the guidelines, the requests put in place by Health Secretary Matt Hancock, of course, we have seen people who have gone out disobeying the direct instructions of quarantine, apparently, and therefore it's not a time for sunbathing. 2 people barbecuing in Brighton and Hove have been arrested and due to face court prosecution for having a barbecue, even though of all the images that we see, people are still keeping their distance. So what is the purpose then? It seems as if the outcome has become too disassociated from the intent. That, okay guys, we can all agree we should maintain distance. You tell us what is the safe distance. We don't know the virus, but we will take your guidance in saying what is a safe distance. You say 6 feet, 2 meters. That is what we will do. Now you're telling us we can't go outside at all unless it's to exercise, and you want to say that the minority are ruining it for the majority, in which case, instead of penalising them, you're going to penalise everybody. But what is it that the minority are doing? They are still obeying the 6 feet rule, but that isn't good enough, of course, which is where things become very disconcerting. But one of the people who disobeyed the rules was, of course, Scotland's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Catherine Calderwood. And, of course, Piers Morgan had a field day about that, And despite Nicola Sturgeon saying, don't resign, we can't have a woman resigning in such a high position of power, she has actually resigned. Trying to be principled, it seems, and say, hey, if I was hypocritical, if I did something I shouldn't have done, I should take full responsibility for that, and therefore not be in this position if somebody else can do it better. Who knows how much of that was that she had to do it for the good of the industry and the face of the brand. But nonetheless, if that's what she thinks is right and takes responsibility that way, then fair enough. In a situation like that, you could either say, these quarantine measures are really overbearing, in which case we should fight to get rid of them, or if you do agree with them, then you should also be punished the same as everybody else. And she's taken the latter decision, which is, I might disagree with it, but honourable nonetheless. At least she has taken one of the two honourable positions. So as we see most areas affected by coronavirus, their daily death toll is decreasing. We've of course seen different countries come together in order to deal with it. And we have here in the United States that as New York City is the worst affected, states on the West Coast, or just Western states, have shipped ventilators over to New York, including Washington, obviously East, sending 400 ventilators to New York, and many other states sending ventilators as they don't need them right now, so pass it over to where it needs to be. So, well done for you. With that in mind, I'd like to skip down to the photos they have of the largest US emergency hospital with 2,500 beds that has been set up in New York City's Javits Center, which is being described as the largest emergency field hospital everywhere in the US. The hospital has been built by the Army Corps of Engineers and is being manned by camouflage troops as well as city health workers. Really taking it seriously. You don't mess with the US Army. So here we see very reminiscent of the Spanish flu photos, of course, but they do have the partitional walls. And we see it broader out from here. Of course, the thing to give anybody national pride is to see, it's not a proper army job. It's not an American job if they don't hang the Star Spangled Banner somewhere there. And of course, they have it almost in the middle, very much on display to say, yes, this is an American job. Also then not to be confused with Italian hospitals again. But we've built it. We are ready. We are waiting. It is good to go. And this is something to be proud of as any American citizen. And of course, next to it is the flag of New York State. That is where it is currently residing. So, jolly well done to them. It looks fantastic and should be able to do the job as is needed, of course, to keep as many people in quarantine as well. You know where they are and you can check up on them, and they are receiving all the medical help they need in a short matter of time, because I'm sure we all know that when Trump received word that China was building their hospitals rapidly, he thought, oh no, we can't have that. We're going to have to do it bigger and better. And therefore, of course, the hospital in New York has been unveiled now. Whether he'll wish to ramp it up after this is a matter to be seen. In other news, Nigeria is very knowledgeable now about the Chinese question, the CQ, about the Wuhan Health Organization, that they're just supporting China for their funding and their influence, in which case Nigeria can't trust them and therefore doesn't trust any Chinese doctors. The government, yes, of course, because they don't care, but the Nigeria's Medical Association has rejected a decision by the government to invite Chinese doctors to help in its fight against coronavirus, instead saying that we have enough unemployed or underemployed here who are ready and willing to help, and we could actually do with it going to the domestic side instead of the foreign side. And it's interesting to see that no claims of racism are being bandied about here, when it seems to be the black people not liking the yellow people, or Nigerians not liking the Chinese. Essentially, that they seem to go, oh, okay, we're not going to call racist there, because good luck if it's supposed to be power plus privilege. Who's more powerful than the Chinese? And of course, in other international news of quarantine, the man who rescued from the Pyrenees has been fined €135. So Essentially, he was trying to walk from France to Spain, apparently to buy cheap cigarettes. That's a non-essential journey because it's out of their 2 kilometer or 1.5 kilometer range that they're allowed out of their home. He initially did try to drive, but was turned back. So then he decided to walk, had to be rescued, and has been fined for that. They say he's been fined for breaking the quarantine instead of for the rescue attempts, of course. But these rescues are incredibly expensive, and you don't wish to incentivize people to go on dangerous trips in order to then be rescued. So it's a double-edged sword for him, I suppose, that yes, it's nice to be rescued, seeing as he was exhausted, shivering, cold, and lost when he was eventually picked up. But also then he knows that it's also the law behind the people who rescued him, who are then looking to find him and prosecute him in whatever manner they see fit. But that's about it. At least we've seen that the Queen is trying to instill a more positive message, and from the comments that I've read and seen about, people are commending her for saying, yes, this is the ideal time to have a calm, measured, reasonable response to congratulate people in doing the right thing, and in a way congratulating people for things that they may not have yet done, but explaining what it is that she's congratulating in order to then encourage other people to do it if they haven't already. Essentially to say, being self-disciplined, the measured resolve, good-humoured, that kind of thing, to say, this is what you should be doing, therefore I'm overtly congratulating everybody who is doing it in order to encourage everybody else to do it. And with that national strength behind it, of course, we see the Americans doing their classic American thing of building bigger and better and displaying their flags, because of course they do have a lot of pride in their flag, and don't have the local councils shooting them down for flying their flags like we do in the UK. So with that in mind, I hope you've all had a wonderful week, lovely weekend, and until next time, stay safe and have a good one.